He withdrew his hand slowly, almost as if he didn't truly want to let the moment slip away. It reminded me of someone waking from a dream they weren't ready to leave behind. I stayed perfectly still, breathing softly, letting the fading warmth on my skin hover there a bit longer. Something delicate hung in the air, almost fragile. My robe had loosened, one sleeve drifting off my shoulder, but I didn't fix it. I wanted the stillness to stretch itself out before reality returned. Some moments settle so deeply within you that remaining silent becomes impossible, and this was one of those rare ones. That's why I'm sharing this now, because even after all this time, the memory sits somewhere far beneath the surface, untouched. It began as nothing more complicated than an act of care, or that's the story I offered him. But the truth carried more layers, meanings I couldn't deliver through words alone, and signs he had not yet learned how to read. Before we go further, take a moment with me. What I'm about to describe isn't truly about physical touch. It's about everything that exists beneath it. Intention, trust, the quiet unraveling a person experiences when they finally allow themselves to be seen without defenses. The towel had already been placed across his shoulders when I stepped back. A faint blend of eucalyptus and something lightly floral settled in the air, grounding the entire room in a kind of calm. I adjusted the towel slightly near his shoulder and whispered, "Just breathe. I'm right here." He gave a soft smile, his eyes already closed. He had always valued gestures like this, simple, thoughtful things that came without expectation. When she entered, her steps were steady, her expression composed. Her hair was pulled into a neat low twist, and she moved with the confidence of someone who understood exactly what each moment needed, no more, no less. She glanced at me once before focusing her attention entirely on him. Her hands rested on his shoulders, beginning with slow, even pressure, not overwhelming, just enough to let the tension release itself. I watched the stress leave his body little by little. Sitting in the warm, dim room felt surreal, as if I had stepped into a memory instead of a moment. She was fully absorbed in her work, her concentration unwavering, and he seemed to believe I had already stepped out. He didn't realize I remained in the corner, quietly observing. I had told him this was something I arranged and then would leave him to enjoy, but I hadn't moved far at all. Her movements flowed gracefully, each shift of her stance smooth and measured. She worked like someone fluent in an unspoken language, mindful, precise, never intrusive. The air filled with calm as she continued. He exhaled slowly, his shoulders loosening as if something inside him had finally exhaled too. His hand twitched slightly, a subtle, unconscious response, but it caught my attention, a faint sign of awareness rising beneath the relaxation. She paused and spoke in a tone that was soft yet lightly playful. "I always said I had the steadier hands," she murmured, mostly to the quiet around us rather than to him directly. He kept his eyes closed, but a small line appeared between his brows, not confusion but recognition. Something in him shifted, something beginning to see beyond the moment. I leaned in a bit, resting my chin against my hand, studying the way his body reacted. It wasn't discomfort, it was curiosity, a quiet awakening. She returned to her rhythm, her movements unchanged, yet the space between them had taken on a new meaning. When I finally stood, she noticed immediately. Her eyes lifted briefly toward me, waiting. I moved to sit on the ottoman beside him, close enough for him to feel my presence without fully seeing me. I placed my hand gently on his arm. His breath caught mid-exhale. His eyes blinked open for a moment, unfocused at first, then slowly settling on mine. There was no need for words. The realization formed on its own, that I hadn't left him alone at all. I had been there, quietly shaping something he hadn't yet understood. She kept working, her tone calm and even, reminding him softly to stay relaxed. The towel remained perfectly in place, her movements consistently thoughtful. The air thickened with a meaning neither of us voiced. She glanced at me again, silently asking a question. I gave her a small nod. Nothing more was needed. He shifted slightly, still unsure, still processing the layers unfolding around him. She stayed grounded in her professionalism, her warmth steady, still comfortable. She asked quietly. His nod was barely noticeable. His voice came low, "Yes, I'm fine." She offered a faint smile and returned to her practiced rhythm. My hand remained resting on his arm, giving him a point of stillness to hold on to. Something unspoken passed between us. He looked at me again, not with confusion anymore, but with growing awareness. I saw it clearly in his eyes, a fragile understanding beginning to take shape. She paused and met my gaze with calm assurance. "You're certain?" she whispered, though we both knew the answer. I nodded once. "This is for him." I said quietly. He needs to learn to let go. He turned his head slightly toward me, his expression softening. He wasn't sure of everything happening, but he trusted the intention behind it. The meaning wasn't tied to the session. It was tied to what it represented. I had noticed the weight he carried, the silent strain he kept hidden even from himself. The session continued almost wordlessly. Her slow motions became less about technique and more like meditation. Each touch wasn't a message of relief or comfort. It was permission. Permission to loosen the grip he held on himself, permission to breathe, permission to stop carrying so much alone. I sat at his side, watching the stillness ripple gently through the space. The evening light softened as the sun lowered outside. He seemed more present than he had been in months. I traced my fingers lightly along his forearm, reminding him I hadn't moved. His fingers twitched again, then relaxed, resting gently on top of mine. She finished her final strokes across his shoulders and stepped back quietly. The air shifted with her movement, settling into a calm quiet. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the dim glow of the room. There was no confusion left, only a deep, settled clarity, the kind that arrives after an internal storm has finally passed. I brushed a hand through his hair and gave a small smile. "Better?" I asked softly. He exhaled, a faint laugh escaping. "Better?" he whispered, almost surprised by his own words. I didn't realize how much I needed that. I nodded, feeling my own breath catch in my throat. "I know," I murmured. She gathered her things quietly, understanding exactly what the moment signified. Before she slipped out, she met my eyes and gave a small, knowing smile. She had understood from the beginning what this was truly about. Once the door closed, he turned his head toward me with calmer eyes. "You arranged all of this," he said softly. "I did." He didn't ask for an explanation, but I gave him one anyway. "Because you forget how to stop. You keep giving everything to the world until there's nothing left for yourself. I wanted you to remember what it feels like to rest, really rest." He didn't respond with words. Instead, he reached for my hand, holding it firmly. The silence between us carried far more meaning than anything either of us could say.